My blessing through the darkness was understanding that my eyes were only one of five senses. I have multiple disabilities, but I choose to be enabled through them all, and I will find a way forward. And if I can't find a way forward, Andy, I'll try and be a voice to help the next generation have a way forward.
This is Down to Earth Conversations, where we hear from ordinary people who are helping to bring a bit of heaven down to earth. Kia ora, welcome to the final episode of Down to Earth Conversations for 2023. I'm Andy Dixon, it's so good to have you joining me. Today's guest, Donna Dyson, is a fantastic human with an inspirational story. Her life has changed significantly on several occasions throughout her life, yet she's managed to pivot and to keep finding ways to move forward and to bring life to others as she does it. It's a little bit longer than usual, but there was just so much goodness I didn't want to cut any of it out. We talk about teaching, literacy, health conditions, and disability. We hear about moments of Donna's life that mark significant endings and how she turned them into new beginnings. We hear about joy, passion, and a love for people, as well as the beauty of seeing people's hearts. This is a truly hope-filled episode to finish the year with. This is episode 85 of Down to Earth Conversations. Here's Donna Dyson. It's a privilege to be talking to Donna Dyson today. Kia ora, Donna. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Andy. I'm really excited to be here.
And usually my first question is, to tell us a little bit about yourself, but I think we're going to kind of maybe go through your story a little bit and people can find out about you as we go through. So, we'll wander through this conversation and see where it goes. But part of your story involves a fairly dramatic change to life in your mid-40s, and we're going to get to that. But first, what was life like before that? What was pre-40s Donna?
I was...
Who was pre... Not what was.
Who I was.
Who was
before I
pre-40s Donna?
Sure. My early years, I was very creative, and ballet was a very large part of that. I had singing lessons, and dance was a very big part of my life. I'm from Australia, and I live in Brisbane on Meanjin country, and in our capital city here, one of the large football ovals of the time, it's now Suncorp, but it was Ballymore, and my father is an elite, he's passed now, but he was an elite rugby player and very important in Australian rugby. And he used to say to me that he wanted me to ballet less and ballet more. That was his little joke about, coming over and watching a bit more rugby in my life. But look, dance was very important to me. And I loved children. I loved teaching ballet when I was younger, and then that led to my passion to becoming an educator. So I have been obviously a daughter and a sister. I have one brother. I am now an aunt to his children. I'm a godmother of 28 children, and who are now young adults, some of them. And I am very blessed to be married to the love of my life. And then I became an educator. I was an educator before I got married, but I was an educator and a past academic university lecturer. I've been a prolific author in children's literacy because that's my academic speciality. And right through all of those journeys, pre the 40 and continuing, I'll add in some extra things for you. I really love cooking. I've taken on my mother's love of gardening. And I love the home, and I love opening up that. I have I consider it as a spiritual gift of hospitality. I love entertaining. Awesome. I love people.
I love people who love hospitality, actually.
Yeah.
I'll go to their house.
Love it. And so I suppose that's pretty much my life before 40. I do have to add one little health thing in there. When I was 2, I fell over. My mum was very she's a very gifted horticulturalist in that she could grow anything. And she had this cacti garden that she was experimenting on. And I was swinging on the gate waiting for her. And I fell over the gate and into the cacti plant. And the thorn on one of the cacti went through my left eye. And I ended up with traumatic cataract. And I went blind in my left eye when I was 2. Now, my father carried the guilt for that for all of his life because he snipped off every thorn bar the one that I fell into. I mean, what are the chances? So my poor darling father dealt with that for all of his journey, and it was just a random thing. But look, Mum was an amazing gardener. I really have taken on my passion for gardening from there. So I suppose, look, there was just that little thing that did interfere with a few midline things like riding a bike or
Yeah.
swimming in a straight line or
Yeah.
doing a pirouette on point shoes. I had to learn to do that with 2 eyes closed to find my center core balance. Apart from that, though, I drove and I did everything that everyone else would do. And yeah, that was kind of my journey there. The other little part, I suppose, to add into this is at 23, I acquired a lung condition, and that wasn't a great thing. That was really quite scary in my early 20s until I was about 29, 30. And I had amazing researchers at the Prince Charles Hospital in Chermside, which is a suburb of Brisbane, and it's a very key thoracic hospital here in Australia. And they did amazing research to be able to isolate and um, create the reality that there were, in fact, 2 conditions happening there. And when they separated them and treated them separately, I became more stable. So there was a lot of learning in my 20s about resilience and about endurance against the odds of my lung, because my lung was, um, it could have taken me any time in my 30, in my 20s. It could have taken me easily. I was in so many ICU situations and tubed because my lungs were really giving me a bit of grief. But look, by God's grace, He had more plans for me to to live forward and do. So I'm still here, and that's a great blessing.
Yeah. And so you were an educator right through that time when you were struggling with your
Yeah,
lungs and
so
things?
I was a teacher, and I'm trained from what we say zero, we say from birth up to I'm trained all the way, in fact, up to postgraduate of university level. So through early childhood, primary, and then into secondary school, and then undergrads and postgrads have been all of the levels that I've taught. I love education. I am a educator to my bones, Andy, and that continues through my work, regardless of what I do. I just have loved teaching, and it's very important in my heart to ensure that whatever group is in front of you, whether they're little people, teens, or sort of young 20s in their university years, that they are all grasping the concepts. And so my pedagogy is quite diverse so that I can ensure that every learning style is met and people are actually absorbing the knowledge. I've been a very passionate educator my whole life. Mm.
That learning style thing's huge, eh? That when I look at the schooling system, it can very easily be tailored towards one particular kind of student.
Yes.
Um, and
It certainly was when in the younger years, absolutely. As in, like in the 70s and 80s in particular, like, everything before that, it was very structured in a sort of singular way.
yeah, what was it that you loved most about teaching?
There's a spark when the children or young people or young adults would grasp the concept, and you could see it in their faces, and you knew that it was going to stay with them forever. And that was this magic of transference, not of knowledge from me to them, but sometimes you are a guide, like a travel guide or a tourist guide on a excursion, and you're pointing out these things of observation that people need to observe, like you're in Egypt and here are the pyramids and this is what happened and this is how they formed and this is the history of this, and they need to explore some of those things themselves. They have to find their own interest and their own angle to become hooked into this kind of concept and to enjoy it. I don't know why I've taken ancient history as my example here, but the point is when they get it, they get it. And
Yeah.
whether it's grammar or a mathematical concept, whether it's music, whether it's history, sociology, it doesn't matter. It's all about the transference of knowledge. And when people's, they just spark their interests. And I've
Yeah.
always been somebody who, to this day, I'm a very strong believer in multiple intelligences and teaching within the domain of a general concept. So it might be some kind of reading device where um, we might be learning with little people, like the magic E on the end of a word, like bake or make. Some children are going to visually just see that and understand it. Some people are going to need the song. When two vowels go a walking, the first one does the talking, and it says its own name, and the other one it says shh, nothing.
Yeah.
So there's a little song that goes with that, and sometimes I would sing that to the children because they will be the oral learners. There'll be
Yeah.
the kinesthetic learners that need to pick up a piece of chalk and write it down on the pavement in colours, and write it until they get it. And make the word families and that. So there's all these different ways of transferring knowledge to people. And
Yeah.
I would work my children in early childhood settings within their multi ability sort of learning style group. And that way, the activities for the same concept could be learned in four different ways. Now, that's a lot of work for a teacher,
Yeah.
but it's worth it. For me, it was worth it because I knew that I was doing my very best to ensure that their natural pathway of learning and through their multiple intelligence of where they just naturally were gifted and able to understand sort of concepts was absolutely being absorbed. And that was a happy transference of a lesson for me.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. It took me a long time to realize that not everyone learned the same way I did.
Sure.
And actually, if you're going to pick a personality type or a learning style that the educational system in this part of the world was set up for, I would be it. So it didn't occur to me that there were other kids that weren't like me that found it a lot more difficult because it wasn't tailored to them and all that sort of stuff. So to have teachers like yourself be able to go, actually, let's do this in a way where everybody has a chance to get it.
Yes,
It's just
that's
beautiful.
what it's about. And it's all about them. It's not about you. As a teacher, it is the most soft suck. If you have a heart of a teacher heart, then you are there for the kids or for your students, no matter what age they are. And um, for me, the pay packet was, just this endless surprise every fortnight that would
Yeah.
come in because,
Yeah.
I truly could have signed up to the convent and become a teaching nun. I absolutely could have done that in my early years.
Yeah.
I wasn't Catholic. I went to a Catholic school, and around 14, I remember the nuns coming around and asking if anybody felt a calling on God, to serve their life. In a way that was service to God. And I put my hand up, absolutely believing that my entire life, no matter what I was going to be doing, was going to be service to God. And I can remember the principal saying, "Oh, Donna, darling, you need to be Catholic first." And it's a small requirement. So, you know,
Failed.
but that wouldn't have stopped me. I would have, joined the Anglican or Lutheran nuns or something if
Yeah.
I had chosen that path. Because really, my whole life was a vocation and for teaching. And I look at that for every area of my professional life that I have served. It's all been, okay, God, what next? And even in the darkest times when I really didn't know what was next, God just always shone torchlights for me by lighting my heart up with enthusiasm for something. People always wonder about how God talks to us. It can simply be the joy. If you are finding something difficult and out of your realm, and it's like pulling teeth to do, then chances are you're not supposed to do it. You know,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong. I'm very strong about focus and resilience, but there are some things that we're round pegs in square holes for, and that's not what we're meant to be. I think that this life, um, I have had thus far. a very blessed life, but a very privileged life. But I've had some really twirly stuff that's happened, cyclonic kind of episodes in my life where my life could be very, very different. I mean, Andy, for
Yeah.
starters, I'm an adopted child.
Right.
Um, and I have only just recently, very, very recently, in fact, in March, met some members of my bloodline family. And that was over in Scotland,
Wow.
and I met some cousins. And it's fantastic. The life that I have, I know would have been very, very different to the one that I could have had. And so I see that for the gifts and talents that God has given to me, they were absolutely able to be developed in my adoption.
Mm,
And I'm not sure that I would have been able to have done or had the opportunities that I had if I hadn't been adopted. I would have also had a blessed life because God is like that. He loves us. He wants the best for us all. I do think, though, that I was given the golden ticket of the Willy Wonka chocolate factory
yeah.
um, prize of adoption because I had family that allowed me to, they didn't really understand my creative streak, but they enabled it. Yeah. And that
Yeah.
was
Nice.
their sacrifice because I came from a very sporty and quite an academic family, but quite a sporty family. And sport is in Australia as in New Zealand
Yeah.
pretty high on the rankings, right? And when you're artistic and creative, that's almost a juxtaposition to the sporting kind of thinking. So, um, ballet and the arts gave me a stream forward to truly develop um, what I obviously loved doing. It wasn't something that I then made my profession out of to begin with, but God doesn't waste anything because when the cyclone came with my lung, I started writing from my hospital bed when I couldn't be doing the other things that I wanted to do. When my cyclone with my health came in other ways, God then returned the creative arts to me, and nothing was wasted. So I see, I see God working in marvelous ways. But I don't want you to think that I, sit here with sunshine beaming over the
Yeah. Yeah. Of
pathway,
course.
all the day because it's a choice to wake up happy, Andy. It's a choice to wake up, and even when I am in incredible depths of health. Where I'm really, really, really sick, there is still that joy of this beauty of the
Yeah.
earth. And there's a beautiful choral piece. Rutter is the surname of the fellow who arranged this piece. So if you look up Beauty of the Earth by Rutter, you will find the song. It's a very beautiful piece. That song came to me later in life, and it really has been um, testament, I suppose, for when I feel unwell. There's always something to be grateful for and to live in a state of wonder of. I live in a state of wonder about space science, the galaxies and the stars and planets totally blow me away at the best of times. And I'm very grateful that I have that wonder and academic interest in it too, I suppose, because I can no longer see the stars. On a full moon, I can work out, the moon, but otherwise, the sky is basically a past tense of my world. So, yeah, so there's blessings that we find.
Why don't you talk about that? Like, how did things change for you in your 40s?
Sure. On the 12th of January 2012, I was wrapping my mum's birthday present. We lost my mum this year, which was very sad, thanks to
Mm,
COVID, which is an awful thing, isn't it?
yeah.
So I was wrapping up my mum's birthday present, and I realized suddenly I was feeling the bows and no longer seeing them, and that was a stroke. Ended up being a stroke. Now, for some people, perhaps some people feel a stroke. Some people have strokes in their sleep and they wake up and they realize that they've had a stroke and they haven't felt it through their sleep. I've had a bunch of them and I've never felt a single one of them. I'm more aware of the sensation more than, I'm in agony of pain or
Yeah,
whatever.
right.
Um, it's just like this sort of flood of fluid that I'm aware of in my head, and I don't. It's always a issue of I know what's coming, and it's going to be, another uphill kind of battle. Um, so the first stroke took my eyesight. Now remember that I was blind in my left eye from when I was two, so it took my right eye. Now it took it completely, so I was completely and utterly in the dark. And by the grace of God, Siri phone with an Apple, you can just ask Siri to do all sorts of things, like call people and call the triple O and all sorts. And I was so grateful that that had been invented because otherwise, um, I may not have been able to have the emergent help that I was able to get so quickly. And being able to have emergent help, instantly when you have a stroke is critical to how you're going to recover from that stroke as well. So I was able to get to the Mater Hospital and they were able to assist me. And we didn't really know why that took place. And then 10 months later, I was having constant MRIs, and 10 months later, they found an inoperable brain tumor. So
Wow.
that has sort of been my life. I was able to gain a slice of sight in my right eye back. So I'm legally blind. That slice of sight is looking at an analog clock, and that means a non-digital clock.
Yeah.
So if your
Yeah.
hands of the clock are on 7 minutes past two, and we count out the minutes 7 minutes, 8 minutes, 9 minutes, 10 minutes past two, where the two hands are crisscross over each other. So that 3 minute wedge is what I see through all of the time, and that's it.
Wow.
It's just a tiny little slice up there on my right eye, and that's what I call the curtains parted. Um, and by the grace of God, that happened because um, I worked out pretty quickly that I would be able to cope without sight. But having a tiny, tiny bit of sight allows me to navigate the world a little easier than if without any sight. Now, understand with blindness, the blindness is on a spectrum. So people will have a pinhole of sight, they will have peripheral sight. Everybody's sight is different. And it's really challenging at times. We're standing somewhere like, for example, in the bakery when somebody behind you works out that you've got a white cane and you're trying to work out what you'd like in the cabinet. And then you sort of point to something and then they go, "You're not blind." It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
let
Yeah,
me
totally.
turn around. You picked the right person because I'm a teacher. And so now you're going to get the lesson,
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
blindness. But it is
Yeah.
a complete and utter spectrum on a bell curve of how much sight people have. So from low vision to, basically living in the dark to the legal blindness status, there's very, very, very minimal difference between living in the dark and the blindness status. Um, if the sun is strong and it's coming into my wedge of sight, then Andy, basically, I've got nothing. It will take
Right.
out any vision I've got.
Of course.
I'm really, really good at nighttime. When there's no lights going into the theatre or something, I can find my seat in a blink because, you know, if you're lost in the city and there's someone with a blind dog, a guide dog, or a
Yeah.
white cane, please ask them for directions. It sounds crazy, but dear Lord, do we know where we are?
Yeah, of course.
So we're very tuned into things that people wouldn't actually kind of get, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so on a scale of 1 to 10, the blindness came, and it would be dismissive of me to not add in that for 3 months I was in a very dark place, even
Yeah,
with
right.
my faith. The dark place came because I couldn't imagine my husband having to, go through our life with joy when this incredible weight had been put upon us. And now this was the second weight that had encountered our marriage because
Yeah.
the first weight came when we lost our only child. And
Oh no.
that was really hard, Andy. And so therefore I I share this context of medical change like this. Nothing at all is like the grief of losing your child. And
Yeah.
so I think that the loss of my sight, the loss of my independence, everything changed when I lost my sight. So it wasn't just the stroke, it was the sight loss that took my career, that took
Yeah.
my mobility, that took my independence. And really, with my career loss, it took my reading. Keep in mind, I'm a specialist of
Yeah.
words,
Yeah.
so that was pretty hard to take.
Yeah.
Um, and it took my publishing world. It took also my friends in many ways, because my friends were working and couldn't just down tools and come and hang out with me. And I'd had a world of colleagues and students where I was seeing, probably around 200 people on average on a very slow day. And then suddenly I was in the darkness, sitting in a chair on my own, and my husband had to go to work. And we have NDIS in this country now, but at that time we didn't. And I had no help. And it was very, very lonely. And some dark thoughts went through my mind of, how much does my husband have to actually endure? Because I want him to have a happy, productive wife here, not somebody who, you know, is suddenly, we have OTs that come in and people guide you through this new world of being blind. And it's kind of like, it's best that you don't use the knife, and it's best that you, in the early days, these things are so, these things are hot, all those things. And you just
Yeah.
feel like all your capabilities are kind of diminished. But that also becomes a choice, Andy. And I decided after about, I don't know, the first kind of week or so, I fell down the front stairs being blind and broke 3 ribs, chipped my tailbone. And the doctors just said, you have to sit until we get some mobility help for you, learn how to use a cane, get a guide dog, or one of those things. So sitting wasn't a good thing, because I realized that my head was going into these pretty dark, sad
Yeah.
places. And so I decided to sit at my piano and mathematically work it out. Now, could I play the piano before, considering we had one in the house? Pretty badly. Um, I don't even think that it's fair to say that I could even find a chord on the thing. My very, very dear friend is a classical concert pianist and is unbelievable, like,
Yeah.
one of the world leading kind of level ones. And so there was always a piano in our home for when she'd come over to play at Christmas time, right? So
Nice. Yeah.
all the dinner parties, that's why the piano was here. And I just thought it was a great opportunity. What the gift that had been given to me, Andy, was time.
Yeah.
And I never had time to learn the piano prior. I was busy as a course coordinator at university, running schools, starting different projects with other schools, very, very busy. And so now everything stopped and it was quiet and it was still. And so I sat down at the piano because I was told I had to sit. And so I sat and I worked out that piano, and I worked it out for, about 8 good months. And then they found the inoperable brain tumor, and I realized that my life could be short at that point. What was I going to do with it? And the great thing in those 8 months is what I realize is that maybe the fact that God has, God doesn't, you know, I don't believe that God gives us illness. I think
Yeah.
that that's just something that the
Yeah.
human body is capable of,
Totally.
contracting, or, but He will bless us through the darkness, is how I see it. And my blessing through the darkness was understanding that my eyes were only one of 5 senses. It wasn't all of it. It's one of.
Yeah.
So I've lost 1/5, but I still have 4/5, and that's a good thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
we can still taste and smell and hear and touch, and they were good enough for me. And my hearing became quite accelerated, and that was a great thing too, because it meant that I could um, enjoy music to a greater level. Sound became really important to me. So I lost my sight, but I gained my creative vision at that point and realized that if my eyes were going to be closed, that God had certainly opened up my ears and that
Yeah.
music was going to be a way forward. The next year, I was put forward for a federal fellowship, and about 20 people I think over 3 sessions of this went through that. There were people there from the AIS, the Australian Institute of Sport, who had injuries. There were people from the SAS Army, like, landmines and all sorts.
Yeah, right.
And they had some kind of disruption in their life and career and an acquired disability. And the idea was to kind of transfer your skill set over to something else. And so my um, my name was put forward, and I was offered one of these places, and I said that I would be really interested in transferring my skill set to music. Now, keep in mind, Andy, I was not a music teacher because
Yeah,
everyone kind of thinks that I was, and
yeah,
I
yeah,
wasn't a music teacher. So I was able to gain a mentor and to develop my musicality and writing. It was very easy transference of skill set to be able to go from rhyming couplets in children's literature
yeah.
to rhyming lines in lyrics. Very transferable space. I
Mm,
understood meter and rhyme, impeccably as an academic. So that was a very easy part of the transference. I became a guaranteed lyricist for many people because of my ability to write and poetically understand, be able to tell a story in so many verses. And then because of my musicality, I was able to start just hearing these amazing melodies in my mind. And I realized at that point that this was going to be the gift from God. This was the moment that I don't take any of the glory for the melody. I know that God has given me an incredible intelligence
mm,
and a very long lineage of learning to be an expert in writing, be it poetry, books, writing, lyrics, whatever, in the writing part, because that's a craft that has to be really refined from a grammar perspective, from a place of a lot of time and a lot of, I suppose, practice, really.
yeah, yeah,
You
absolutely.
don't just kind of stumble in that. You do kind of need to know what you're doing. So, with that under my belt, I realized that these melodies were coming to me, and I was able to then kind of flow them out through the piano or a guitar. Now, a guitar can come into this conversation quickly because I could play 3 chords maximum on a guitar. And that was one of the things that I had strung on the back of my back when I was an early childhood teacher, because if a kid didn't understand the magic E, like we talked about before, I would be able to sing a little song to them. And that was another pathway. Neuro pathways, fantastic, different ways that we learn. So that was always a skill that I did have in my little kit when I went blind. I did know 3 chords on the
Yeah,
guitar. That's now advanced to a few more, which is exciting. But
can say three's a good place to start for
three
a
is a
lot of
good place
songs.
to start. Yeah, that's right. And also, I'd grown up with a worship band in my church,
Yeah,
and I would often be one of the worship leaders or one of the vocalists. So I was very aware of working in that kind of space, but I never saw that as performance. That was only ever worship. And so this was a new kind of space of having to put that music together. Anyway, the Federal Fellowship allowed me a mentor, and I was able to start working with incredible people and learn how to co-write. That was fantastic. Those co-writers have now become very, very close friends. And what I was bringing to that co-writing session was this incredible thing that I didn't even realize that I had until it was really brought to my attention how useful the transference of my literacy ability would be. So that was a blessing. And then I started writing on my own, and I still co-write to this day. I'm a passionate collaborator. It's not because I'm blind; it's because I love people, and I think that we're better together. And so, um, any artist that thinks that they do it completely on their own, I won't fall for that line, because it takes an audience to accept it and hear it. So even in a partnership with an audience, you aren't on your own, and there are people at the back ends of the distribution sort of areas of music, and they're all working their magic to get your music out there in the world. So there's so many people that actually make a partnership to get a song out into the world. So I love the whole collaboration thing. In 2016, I was the Australian Songwriter of the Year. In 2022, 22, 21, I was the Australian Children's Songwriter of the Year, and that all came from the Australian Songwriting Association and APRA. And so that's been a really, it's been a journey, but that's kind of where I am now. And I have three labels signed with MGM and ABC globally, and I'm pretty happy. I suppose that's the short line.
Yeah. Does that blow your mind when you look back and go, here's me sitting in the dark at a piano and figuring this thing out, and now, here I am with awards and labels and contracts. Is that?
Yeah, it does. I think, but God is good, right? God has a plan. We don't have a plan. God has a plan and doesn't waste anything. This is my learning. Um, People say these are the things I know for sure. Well, Andy, what I know for sure is that God does not waste anything. If He's given you a gift or a talent, I'm quite outspoken about this, so bear with me. Um, it doesn't just happen. If you have a gift for running, you might work that out in primary school, but if you don't keep running, you won't make the Olympics, right? You've got to put into this stuff. You've got to serve the gifts that you've been given. Otherwise, you're wasting it in some
Yeah.
ways. Um, and our gifts are not meant for us. Even if you are a runner and you train and then you get a gold medal, well, the gold medal is not really for you. It's actually to represent your country, and it's a country achievement as well.
Yeah.
Everybody at home who can't run are cheering you on, feeling great because there you are, and the New Zealand flag goes up or the Australian flag goes up in our case, and we're all cheering on, yay Australia, or yay New Zealand. You know what I mean? Like, it's if you're a amazing footballer, you need to go out and catch and kick that ball until you are an outstanding footballer. Because amazing is not good enough, yeah. And I'm very driven, Andy, and a lot of people aren't. So I'm very respectful of where people's motivation is. As an educator, I've seen the spectrum of that. But I won't waste something because when I meet God, Andy, I want to be empty because I want to say to Him truly that I've used everything you've given me. That's my goal. So all of the awards, I'm presently in the lounge room at home where I'm speaking to at the moment, and we're in the development of thinking about building a studio underneath our home. But in the meantime, I've got 2 years of awards that are in a folder because we haven't got any more space on the wall, literally for the frames. And
Yeah. Right.
I'm, you know, I'm very humble about that because the awards are not why I do it. I've
Yeah.
hit When you hit the millions on the streaming, um, around the world, Andy, around the world, children are singing and dancing to my music around the world, and that blows my mind. That's
Yeah.
what blows my mind. The technology blows my mind because I don't really understand it, but it's just it gets everything out there, right? Your podcast around the world, everyone can hear it, and that's the magic. And that's where I see God using these brilliant minds who are technical, who have created these platforms. And although, yes, they rob the artist of money, they certainly get our stuff out to a very
Yeah.
large audience, right?
Yep.
So there is a kind of give and take there. Um, but the kids dancing in their lounge rooms around the world, or in their classrooms, or on the school concert stage, or at the kindy graduation, or at the school choir at Stedford, that is the award, Andy.
Yeah.
That is how I am still a teacher, and that makes me very happy.
It sounds very similar to what you were saying about why you love teaching. That
Yeah, it's
seeing
all
that
for the
spark or
kids.
seeing that joy,
Yeah,
and you're still doing it. You've just got a new way of doing it,
yeah,
and a way that suits who you are.
yeah. My children's label is called Spotty Kites. Spotty because polka dots are kind of cute and childish, aren't they? They're really cute and happy. And kites because it's the universal toy of the child. It's free. Children around the world understand a kite. They can make it from a intergenerational experience with their grandparents or aunts or uncles or neighbors. They can do it at a library craft fair, and it's so Spotty Kites became the label, and through Spotty Kites, it really is literacy through music. So every single song is a story. You can take every single lyric into a classroom and deconstruct it and do an entire literacy lesson from it. We have a NAPLAN examination in Australia here, which is working out, if kids are kind of, you know, meeting the quota of where they should be for their age in literacy. I'm not a huge fan of formalized testing like that because
Yeah.
we all learn at different stages and ages. So I think it really is not the greatest tool. Um, However, it is a tool, and it's out there, and you can't do much about it when it's governed for the whole nation. Um, but I wrote a song called Washing Scruffy because for a narrative, for a situation, complication, and a resolution in a story, in a song, if a child learns washing scruffy, they can change the scruffy dog for washing a guinea pig or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and if they recount that story on a piece of paper with a pencil, they should pass their NAPLAN exam if it's a narrative. A procedure genre for the baking song. It goes on and on. All of the songs, there's like over 100 in Spotty Kites, but they all have a literacy device associated with them. They're much
That's
more
awesome.
than a song. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, which is so special. It's taking all of the, like you're saying, nothing's wasted. It's taking all of the things that are part of who you are and putting them together in a way that's still doing the stuff that you love to do, which I think is just beautiful.
And it's a privilege, and I don't take it for granted. It's not something that, I'm not any more special than any other human on the earth, Andy, in doing what I'm doing. We all have gifts and talents. It's a matter of what sparks your joy and doing more of that, because you will find a way, of making money from that if that is what you need to do. But it's not about money. I mean, gosh, I went from a fortnightly wage as an educator and education leader and academic to nothing. And music is not the greatest payer, right? So
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
have to pay a lot to make the albums, but it's not the great return. It's not the best in return. Not like a fortnightly wage, but my world is governed by this vocational calling. And my
Yeah.
vocational calling is to help kids and to be able to give to them something that I still can give. And, it's a privilege. So I don't kind of, yeah, I get up in the morning, and there's days when I'm not motivated because that's all of us. However, that joy it will never leave me. It comes to me by about 9:15, and I will find a way to get back to my craft and keep doing it. And that's what I encourage people listening to this podcast to do, is to find their joy, and to, you'll know your joy because it's the spark, and that's your happy place. And it could be, it might be the most tiniest thing. You might be taking your pet to an aged care home to do visitations,
Yeah.
and the joy that every one of those elderly folk will find when they see your pet coming around to their room on that day. What a gift. What a gift you are doing. What an impact you would be giving to, people's lives. It doesn't have to be, you know, doing anything particularly special, but
Mm.
it's about doing something to benefit someone else's life. Because we're not here as solo silos, are we? We're here to be in community, and
Yeah.
we're here to bless others. And that's what communion is all about. Is it's where the word comes from, and we need to be in communication. All those words is what our world is about, and what our world is hungering for, Andy.
Yeah.
I think people desperately want to be in community with each other, but they don't know how. And the computers, certainly with kids on screens, it's
Mm.
certainly creating isolation, and of course COVID did that as well. But we need to get up and get off our butts and get into community again. Quite frankly, I'm a big believer in it, in any little way that we can do it.
I was just thinking as you're talking about, the what sparks joy for you, and then taking the pet around the rest home or whatever. That it's this idea that actually joy sparks joy as well. That if you find the thing that brings you joy, then you're going to bring other people joy.
Yeah.
Um, and
Joy
I
comes
mean,
from giving, Andy. It's
I,
all
I
about
hear that
forgiving.
even in just listening to you and your story, I'm feeling more joyful because you're
Ah,
sharing
that's
all of this joy of of what this journey's been like for you, and not leaving out the hard stuff, but
Yeah,
going, but actually, like, I love this, and I love changing people's lives, and I love connecting with kids, and I'm excited by that, and I'm excited to be able to share that with the people who are listening to this, um, because I think, if we all find that thing that brings us joy, then we can share that, and that's something that, I'm really big on. That actually, one of the things we're called to do in life is to bring some joy to the world, in whatever little tiny way we can do that.
absolutely. And look, there are times that I'm an absolute cranky pants, Andy. I mean,
Yeah,
after some of the strokes, it's
yeah,
pretty hard to
I
walk,
bet.
and
Yeah,
my feet really hurt, and I'm in a lot of pain, and uh, sometimes the tumor gives me a lot of pain. But the reality is, you've got to find the joy even in that space, yeah? And you've got to
yeah,
find, in those moments for me, my joy comes from finding gratitude. And NDIS has blessed me incredibly with some very beautiful people that would not be in my life
yeah,
if this hadn't happened. Yeah. And I don't take anything for granted or anyone for granted. Everyone in my life, I see that God has somehow woven his tapestry of weaving them into my life. And, um, every situation encounter that's very different for me. I'm the national ambassador for Vision Australia, so I do a little work for them, and that's a joy. But there's lots of other things that I'm very passionate about. I've been on almost every children's book council board, the literacy boards, the Meg Gibbs, all of those kind of ones for children reading. I'm very, very passionate about an organisation called War Child, which is about giving authors and artists giving a percentage of their royalty to be able to create development of new play parks in war-torn countries so that
yeah. Well,
children can get some sort of normality. Um, there are so many things in the world that are bad, Andy, but we have to find the good, and the good in even the horror of war is looking and finding the helpers. And when we find the people who are helping and are there caring on the ground, or are doing supportive work from afar to get funds to them, that's where we have to find the blessing. That's where we have to put the energy of gratitude in. And eventually wars will pass and new seasons come. But all the way along, community stands, all the way along, people caring for each other, doing one small thing, a cake stall in your local community, literally, that money at the moment could be buying bandages for babies done,
yeah,
the Israel campus. So it's from Save the Children Fund or any of the organizations that are sort of helping at the moment. But even in the horror, Andy, we can still find sparks to be grateful for. Those people that are helping, those people that are reaching out. And
yeah,
when you're alone in your room, and for the people who might be listening and going through a challenge, in the times when you are most alone, that is truly a gift of time. And that's what we need to find the gratitude for. In a busy life, you lose time. The thing that the most wealthiest, busiest people want is time. It's the thing that they probably, you can't buy it, right? And so you can't bottle it. And so when you do find yourself in a stillness, that is a gift of time. It's a time to be reflective, to be prayerful. You have a gift of time to pray for the people in Israel, in Gaza, in Ukraine, in Russia, all of the horror that's happening around the world. We have this privilege of time, and we can be the prayer warriors, or we can be the ones who write the encouraging letters to somebody who's lonely, or we can find something that we're capable of doing for someone else, and that makes the loneliness go away because we're in a state of gratitude and giving. Um, it's
mm,
all about the love, isn't it? That's what I feel that we're called to do, is just really love each other.
yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. And like you say, you've done some ambassador work. You're also a big advocate, um, and for people who have gone through the sort of things that you've gone through, chronic illnesses or whatever.
Yeah.
What's changed in you, or what, having gone through those things, what sort of attitudes have changed in you, or that you would like to see changed in other people when it comes to the way that they connect with chronic illnesses or things
I
like that?
think I've been a spokesperson for Rare Disease Days as well as obviously for Vision Australia. Um, I think that with all things, when I'm in a wheelchair, and especially if I've got an oxygen cylinder behind me, it's tricky. You realize the limitations for people who are in chairs all the time. Because I have the gift that my chairs only last for a season at the moment. There'll be a time potentially. I've had I think I'm up to 5 strokes and 3 TIAs now. So there'll be a time when potentially a stroke will completely paralyze one of my sides, and I'll be, chair ridden. Um, I think that it's a really tricky thing. We are still not an accessible society. Um, we're not. Uh, you'll find that there'll be even like the accessible bathrooms, and the locks sometimes don't work. you know
Yeah,
they're on a
yeah,
shopping center walkway where everyone's walking past, and the door can just fling open. Things sometimes are not as easy as what they should be. And I'm a huge advocate for accessibility, and also in the arts. We don't have accessible theatres at times. There'll
yeah,
only be 4 seats for wheelchairs. Well, what if 30 want to come?
yeah.
Um, there's Auslan interpretation at concerts, and sometimes there's no one with a hearing impairment. However, there's no audio description for the blind. you know, there's
Right.
all of these things that we need to be, or a quiet room for somebody with a sensory issue. Um, I'd like to see a lot more awareness of stuff like that, and provision where it becomes a norm, Andy, and that we look at each other's hearts and not at our um, I don't like the word disability. It's not something. I've just been involved in a disability conference and a festival, an arts festival, and it is a disability arts festival. That's what it is. I feel that the word dis means not,
Yeah,
and I feel very enabled,
yeah.
not disabled. I have multiple disabilities, but I choose to be enabled through them all, and I will find a way forward. And if I can't find a way forward, Andy, I'll try and be a voice to help the next generation have a way forward.
I remember all the way back on my third episode, Emma, who I was talking to there, uh, talked about diffabilities. It's not disabilities; it's different
Yeah, I
abilities,
love that. I
and
love that.
people are all differently abled.
Yes.
Um, and actually, it's been a recurring theme actually on the podcast as well. This idea that the way that society does or doesn't cater to those different abilities is actually what disables you in a lot of ways.
Yes.
Um, and so, yeah, I think there's so much that we can do as a society to be more inclusive, and not
Yeah.
just talk about being more inclusive, not just have it as an ideal, but actually
Yeah.
go, what
That's
does
it.
that look
Not use
like?
it as a lip service, right?
Yeah,
And Andy, I think that the greatest blessing, uh, truly, it's a blessing being blind. Um, People may think that that's a ridiculous statement, but I live it. So I'm
mm,
really speaking from the heart and a truth that is for me. This is my truth. It
yeah,
may not be for somebody else. But the blessing for me being blind is I only see people's hearts.
yeah,
The judgment of life dissipates because there's no, um, I don't know what shoes someone is wearing at times. I don't know
yeah,
what fancy car or not that they have.
yeah,
I see a heart that wants to drive me from A to B for an appointment, or I see a heart that wants to spend time and sit down and talk, or help me, prepare dinner or whatever.
yeah,
I see hearts that want to collaborate with me, and I don't care how many awards are in their house. It's or in their studio. It's a privilege because those things of the world don't seem to matter. Um, like once, you kind of, I've lived in a world of academia and
mm,
education leadership, and you work your way through the slog to get to those kind of places. And all of that doesn't matter. Degrees don't matter to me anymore because I can't use any of them. Like learning does. Learning
Yeah.
matters.
Yes.
And I'm really pro. If people don't find school attainable for them, we learn through so many different ways.
Yeah.
You know, there's courses outside school that will give people qualifications and a way forward that the school metric won't
Yeah.
necessarily do. So there's multiple pathways to get to the same result. And I think that, you know, what I'd really like to see is that we just look at people's hearts and we look at people's possibilities and capabilities and what they enjoy. Where is their spark? And we become encouragers, you know? So I've had a lot more time to reflect about things like that since being blind, and I'm really grateful for that because I see things much clearer being blind than I did sighted. I feel very blessed with a little bit more wisdom. Maybe that comes with age, but um, it's also that some of the things don't matter. Some of the things that, you know, you fuss about, you spend so much time shopping for the right outfit for something, but realistically, somebody like me will only see your heart.
Yes.
It's all that matters.
Yeah.
It's all that I'll remember. And it's the same as what most people will, you know, unless you're working in an elite fashion industry where fashion really, really matters. The truth is, we don't really remember what anybody wore to the last year's awards. We remember how they treated us, right? It's
Yes.
like schools and teachers and relationships with work colleagues. We don't remember what they wore or, you know, what suburb they lived in or what car they drove. We remember how they treated us. They remember the relationship that we had with them. And I think that that's the stuff, that's the meaty stuff that matters in life. And it's been a privilege being blind to work that one out.
Well, I think that's a wonderful note to finish on. Um, yeah, it's just such a beautiful concept that I think most people would never have thought that that could be a possibility. And so for you to state it that clearly, I think is a real challenge to us all to value what's really important in life. So yeah, thank you for taking time to chat with us today. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for the way that you just constantly want to see others honoured and growing and flourishing. And so yeah, thank you for what you're doing to bring a bit of heaven down to earth.
Thank you, Andy. It's just it's a joy to chat with you, and I just hope that your listeners find their spark and yeah, go forward in that sense of joy today.
Hello, hello, heaven. Will I hear you whisper to come near?
I'm so grateful to Donna for sharing herself with us. I don't think she's an inspiration because she's overcome a disability. In fact, I'm not sure that disability is something people need to overcome at all. Rather, Donna is an inspiration because she follows her passions and uses her talents to love people, no matter what happens in her life. She pivots, she changes and grows, but she never loses herself. Her attitude is infectious and her work is sublime. Donna, thank you for who you are and for what you do. Here is a blessing for you. Donna, may you and your husband continue to know the joys of life in the good times and the hard times. In those harder times, especially as your body's capability changes, may you always keep hold of that joy and that hope, that attitude that chooses to be enabled in whatever ways you can. May you continue to be surrounded by people whose hearts are good, who bring you life as you also bring life to them. May you continue to be surprised by the types of people you spend time with that you might not have spent time with in your sighted days. People whose hearts tell you so much more about them than you could ever see with your eyes. And may they continue to challenge and inspire you on in your journey of love and acceptance. May you continue to find creative vision in new ways, letting your creativity mold and adapt to where you find yourself and who you find yourself with. May your songs continue to make their way around the world, bringing life and joy to children and adults everywhere. May there be an abundance of dancing and singing, of learning and growing because of the gift you are to the world and the treasures you release as a result. May you continue to find opportunities to be a voice for those who are dismissed, neglected, or silenced, as well as those of future generations. May you know that the legacy that you are leaving is great and that many, many lives have been and will continue to be made better because of who you are and what you do. As you ballet less these days, may you indeed ballet more, letting the fire in your belly continue to drive you to love, encourage, and nurture the life in others through your music, your advocacy, and your presence. Lastly, may you know that your heart is seen, that you are heard, and you are loved. Thanks to Strawn for the music and Rangi for the karakia, and thanks to all of you for listening. It's all of you listening who make this thing what it is. And if you found these conversations valuable, please tell a friend about them. That would be a wonderful Christmas present to me. Thanks to all of my guests this year. You are wonderful human beings, and I am so blessed to have spoken with you. This podcast takes a break now for the New Zealand summer, launching again sometime in February 2024. Ngā mihi nui ki a koutou. Thanks to you all. Until then, me inoi tātou.
E tō mātou matua I te rangi, kia tapu tō ingoa, kia tau mai tō rangatiratanga, kia mea te tau e pai ai ki runga ki te whenua, kia rite anō ki tō te rangi. Homai kia mātou ai nei, he taro mā mātou mō tēnei rā. Muro o mātou hara, me mātou hoki e muru nei I o te hunga, e hara ana kia mātou. Aua hoki mātou e kawea, kia whakawaia. Engari whakaorangi a mātou I te kino.